My name is John Bolling. I'm a retired police officer from Roanoke City, Virginia, and currently I've been a risk manager for VACo, which is the largest public uh, service entity in the state of Virginia. I've been with VACo for 15 years and have been using Drive Square Simulator since 2011. And what I do is I'm a senior public safety specialist, and I work with public safety, law enforcement, specifically for reducing losses in all aspects of their job. So my training covers classroom training, which I have put together a 4-hour driver training class for high-speed pursuits and emergency runs. And after doing that class for several years, I got some feedback that the officers wanted some hands-on training to just to reinforce their experiences in driving. What we found is in the academies across the state of Virginia that there are only a few that offer hands-on driving experience. So what we're able to do is get with Drive Square. We came up and we saw their program. We liked it. We introduced it to our emergency and pursuit class. And through DCJS in the state of Virginia, we were able to get 2 hours of in-service credit for the driver simulation. I conduct the 4-hour training program, which entails the Virginia State Code, policy, uh, the best practices in the state for law enforcement on how to run emergencies and pursuits safely. We go through a decision-making process, and we also talk about driving behaviors. And after that class, we will then set up the Drive Square simulation in which we observe the officers in several situations of emergencies, pursuits. And what we found is that, some of these drivers drive extremely fast. They tend not to approach the intersections in a manner where they need to clear the intersection. The simulator brings that out through hard braking, through crashes and other things. And then once we take them through that first simulation, and there is an incident that takes place, we're able to go back and kind of do learn lessons as to why it occurred. And what we see is generally intersections we drive too fast. So we reinforce what the state code says is due regard for safety. So we put the driver back through the scenario or a different scenario where there's an intersection or multiple traffic hazards, and we have them make better decisions first and foremost by driving slower and then taking that intersection, getting through safely, and then to the call in which they can do what they're supposed to do, which is protect and serve the community. And what we've seen in feedback is that, that even though it's not real, it simulates real life hazards through congested traffic, intersections, um, pursuits of different vehicles, different routes, highway, rural roads, even to include off-road situations, where they're able to make better decisions in the apprehension of the violator and or termination of the pursuit. And in that decision matrix, we do talk a lot about, is the risk of pursuing worth the reward of apprehension? And in putting them through the scenarios, they're able to see that in a clear way, that sometimes these pursuits are very hazardous and are not worth the reward. So, and then in turn, they would terminate that pursuit. Here in the last couple of years, we've incorporated true distractions that are in law enforcement vehicles today. Cell phone use, computer usage, along with the radio traffic. And what we do is we set up a handy-talkie in the vehicle. We have the dispatcher or simulated dispatch call. actually take place in the simulation. We will actually have the computer engaged where they will receive a message or informational updates to the call that they may be on, and to simulate that real life distraction and then put them through the scenario where the hazards are occurring quickly. We then see that they're able to adapt in a better manner as to missing or able to get around these situations in a better and safer manner. And that truly has become a very good experience for them to see with the distractions that are taking place in the vehicle. With that, DriveSquare has been a very good addition to our training program. It allows the sheriff's offices, police departments to obtain at least 6 hours of in-service credit, which gives them or leads to their certification every 2 years. So with that, we've seen just a really good response. Most sheriffs and chiefs get pretty excited about it. In fact, we've had numerous chiefs and sheriffs invite the media to have the media participate in the simulator, to participate in the class, to get the overall perspective of what we're trying to do to keep these officers safe and the citizens safe within the towns, counties, and cities that they serve. So, with that, I would just say that, DriveSquare has been a very good addition. It has been something that we feel like that we can add to and make our classes become more realistic, more real life, and take it out of the classroom to hands-on training, which is probably the most requested training that we get. As a law enforcement officer in my time, simulators were just starting to come out and getting a lot of attention on how these officers can make decisions in the split-second issues that they deal with, including use of force, driving, domestic violence type calls, school shootings, those kind of things, and taking these officers through real life simulations has really enabled them to be a better responder, to make better decisions under stress, and to be able to do that in a safe manner for themselves, their peers, and the citizens that they serve. When we first started using the DriveSquare simulation, we basically used it for defensive driving and distracted driving to reinforce looking ahead, looking around, using their mirrors, leaving room, a safety cushion when involving high-speed runs so that we don't end up in an incident involving multiple vehicles. We talked about communicating in traffic, changing lanes, again, clearing intersections, those type of things. And then the anticipation of these hazards, them being able to drive through the scenario in a safe manner. After a couple years of doing that, we realized that we needed to involve high speed, more of the lights and siren type responses. So we got with the owner of DriveSquare. We gave them some video footage of real life situations, which they were able to put into scenarios through the virtual reality program software that they use. And we were able to recreate those scenarios and have the officers running those or responding to those in a manner that would train and help teach them to be safer, where in most of those situations that we shared, there was the result of that scenario was a crash or an incident. So to be able to get through that situation safely really helped evolve in our DriveSquare experience. And then lastly is what I've already mentioned already is the distraction piece, being able to utilize radio, cell phones, computers while also in these scenarios. and being able to handle a call, talk on a phone, respond to a quick email or an update from a dispatcher in order to make good decisions and still get through that scenario in a safe manner. Well, what we generally are hearing through the feedback of the officers, first of all, I'll talk about the older officers. Most of these law enforcement officers only get 1 week of driver training in the academy, and that's it. So if they're a 15-year veteran, they have had no reinforced driver training whatsoever in the state of Virginia. They've had none. So when we bring our class and the driver simulator to their organization, it's able to refresh, bring back the awareness, in fact, raise the awareness of where they need to be in their driving decisions in order to drive safely. So basically, we're hearing it kind of took them back to the academy, that, it even gave them more, information, that it was more realistic, and the fact that we're incorporating their policy, new laws in the state of Virginia, and what they have to do in order to drive safely. For the new officers, it just reinforces. Most of them have graduated within the last year to 3 years, and they've had the hands-on experience in some of these academies that we train with, but also it reinforces the fact that we do need to be safer. We do need to make good decisions. We also have utilized drive square simulations to reinforce seatbelt use. What we've seen nationally is that 47% of law enforcement officers do not wear seatbelt. So in asking the question of seatbelt use, a lot of the reasons why law enforcement doesn't wear it is to be able to get out of the vehicle quicker and not to get hung up on the uniform or the equipment. So what we do in the simulation, if we have a majority of officers in that organization who don't wear a seatbelt, we take about 30 minutes before we do any scenarios, and we practice putting the seatbelt on and taking the seatbelt off. And we do it numerous times in order to get very familiar with it, that it becomes more like muscle memory in order to use it. And what I have heard in feedback is that normally, if it's a 47 to 50% not wearing a seatbelt, by the end of the driver simulation, we're up to 75 to 80% of these officers wearing seatbelts, which is dramatic, because when we look at line of duty death involving law enforcement, the trend of death is lose control of the vehicle. So we talk about speed in the class, we talk about speed in the driver simulator. Losing control of the vehicle leaves the roadway. So in leaving the roadway, a lot of times speed is a factor in these crashes, and sometimes it's the environment that they're driving in and or weather. So we reinforce driving to the conditions of the road. The other trend is hit a tree or a pole or building or rollover. And the last trend is ejection. So again, going back to seatbelt use, when we reinforce these trends in order to make safer driver decisions for speed, loss control, environmental conditions, weather, wearing a seatbelt, the driver simulator has helped us to reinforce that in a dramatic way. And the feedback has been very, very good for that. Some of the areas we look at after our training classes is losses, meaning incidences or crashes that occur after the training. What we found over using the driver simulator since 2011 is that most organizations will go anywhere from 4 to 6 months without any incident at all, which is extremely good in a law enforcement agency, because generally the losses that occur within that county, meaning law enforcement is a department of that, 75% of those losses involve law enforcement. So if we're able to reduce these incidences over a period of time, we're seeing a dramatic loss over the overall county losses, which has been very good. What we've seen over time is that our crashes have decreased 20%. Now, I will tell you there's one particular organization that we did the class and the driver simulation. And after that class, that organization went 2 years with no incidences, driving incident crashes at all, which is phenomenal. We have not seen it since, nor will we may ever see it again. But because of the sheriff and his enforcement, his leadership, and his willingness to let us come in and help his officers see that they need to be safer, created a culture of safety for their drivers. And so we have seen some dramatic decreases in incidences. And like I said, overall in county losses, we've seen about a 20% decrease overall. Any issues that I've ever had with technology, software, setting up the system, even replacing parts, those things, Drive Square customer service has been excellent. We've had no issues with that. As far as the customer service, it has been excellent. And I would say nothing but good things about the customer service at Drive Square. I would recommend this to any public safety risk pool. And in fact, anyone using law enforcement, fire, or EMS responses in their training. For one, cost effectiveness. In most of these areas, states, and so forth, the academies could be many hours away, and travel time alone would be very expensive. Also, scheduling is also another issue involving public safety. In these days, with limited manpower, resources, and other things that go into training, budgets, and so forth, or limited budgets, what we're seeing is that bringing the simulation to the organization has been a win-win. It has just been cost effective in all areas of training. Having the budget limitations, manpower limitations, and scheduling, as well as logistics of where the academies are located and how you might have to obtain in-service credit or training by following the standards within the state of Virginia, getting the credits through the Department of Criminal Justice Services, by bringing the simulator to the organization. Again, it has just been overwhelming of a win-win in all areas of training. So why wouldn't you use it? That would be my question. Not if you could use it, but why wouldn't you use it? Because it has just been overwhelming. It speaks for itself as far as the budget constraints and manpower. Since we've been really dedicated to the law enforcement side of the Drive Square simulator, we've also used it in or with firefighters, with EMS employees, for emergency driving, for defensive driving, and for distracted driving. And from that, we've also have incorporated into our defensive driving program, which in our state, we have 88 county members. And of those 88 county members, most have a general services or utilities department in which we were able to use the driver simulator to reinforce defensive driving and distracted driving with those groups. We've hooked it up to dump trucks. We've hooked it up to pickup trucks, larger vehicles, in all type of settings, whether it be garages, roadways. And again, the feedback has been, you're delivering a hands-on product that we're not able to get anywhere else. And with the budget constraints, again, limited manpower and scheduling, bringing that simulator to the organization, hooking it up to their vehicle that they drive on a daily basis, just helps create a better environment of the driver simulation. And it relaxes the driver. It gives them a better atmosphere to work in and to truly see where their discrepancies are when it comes to their behavior. And we're able to correct those in a timely manner and help them see that they need to change those behaviors in order to be safer.